Thank you for listening to this episode.
And follow the podcast on social media by finding @PrestigiouSPod. And if you'd like to be coached on how to live a more prestigious life, you can reach out to me, Chris Bean, @ChrisBeanOfficial, or by emailing the podcast directly at prestigiousinitiative@gmail.com.
Lastly, sign up for our newsletter either through social media or on our website.
This is the Prestigious Initiative. Welcome. I'm Chris Bean. Today, I want to take a moment and talk about what separates high performers from, well, honestly, from the rest of us. And at no time during this conversation am I claiming to be or proclaim to be a high performer. These are just kind of the things that I have noticed that separate what we mostly consider a high performer from what a non-high performer is. Okay, so maybe it would be helpful to distinguish what is a high performer. Well, someone that's a high performer is esteemed in their role, esteemed in their field of expertise. They have a field of expertise. They're known for these things. You think about Michael Jordan, one of the greatest, if not the greatest of all time basketball player. Think about Magnus Carlsen, one of the greatest, in fact, the #1 world champion for chess. Right, two very different things, but they stand alone in the fact that they are high esteem. They are high performers in their realm of expertise. So what are the things that they do on a continual basis, on a consistent basis, that separate them from what we could do? And hopefully we can apply these key characteristics that we discover together here over the course of all of the different attributes. And hopefully we can actually apply these to what we have going on as well. So let's start with the first thing, right? First thing is these people that are high performers, again, despite what field they're in, are consistent. They show up day after day after day. Sometimes they have to be told to leave, to go home, take a break, eat some dinner or something, then come back, right? But they stand alone in the fact that they are high performers and they show up consistently. I think about like an actor, like Keanu Reeves. Keanu Reeves is known for showing up to set, specifically when he's training martial arts or whatever the action role is for the movie that he's doing. He shows up first, and he's last to leave. Right? Those are the things that separate him from the other people that are doing the things that are similar to him. They are, imitating what he is actually doing, and that's what we are all trying to do. We're all trying to imitate what those people are factually doing. So, high performers, they're consistent. They show up, they put the time in, they're there early, they stay late. Another thing that I think separates high performers from everybody else is they are able to manage their time wisely. Right? It's not that they have more hours in the day than anybody else. We all have the same 24 hours in the day, but the things that we do with those 24 hours is vastly different than what Elon Musk does. Right? High performers seemingly almost universally get up earlier than the average person, and oftentimes they differ on the time they go to bed, right? Sometimes high performers, they go to bed early so that they can rise early, and sometimes high performers stay up late and they go to bed late, which means they get less sleep than what us normal people get. So let's kind of dive into the consistency basis, right? So they show up early, they put the work in, and they're there consistently. They're there all of the time. Let's think about this as a longevity standpoint. We wouldn't know names like Michael Jordan if he was the greatest for one season. Sure, you could be the greatest for one season. People maybe have outperformed Michael Jordan in one season. However, they cannot do that. They cannot make that same claim over the lifetime that they are in that field. That is something that separates them, the high performers, from everybody else. They show up early. They stay through, and they are thorough with that, right? They show up, they're there. It's not like Michael Jordan decided, okay, well, I'm gonna be the best in the world of basketball right now, today. Okay, great, today I did it, bye. No. He spent his lifetime doing this from a really early age and continuing through on. That is what separates him from those other people. That is why people attribute that to him. That is why people aspire to be like Michael Jordan. So how can we apply this? One of the things that oftentimes people struggle with is that consistency, showing up, doing the same thing over and over again, because really that gets bored. You get bored of doing that. You get tired of doing this over, and I got to do this again. I got to do. Yes, it's your job, right? Michael Jordan did go and play basketball as his job. That was his job. That was his career. That was also his passion. And I think passion plays a key aspect in this, because those high performers are high performing. They're consistent. They show up. They put the work in, but they have passion for whatever it is that you do. So something that we can learn from this is, whatever your field is, whatever you attribute or whatever you aspire to excel at, you have to have a passion in. Because without that passion, it'll quickly turn into a grind. It'll quickly turn into a chore. It'll quickly turn into something that you do not want to do on a consistent day in and day out basis. You have to transform into that role. You have to be that role, not just on a sometimes, but on a all the time. You have to become that person. Again, Michael Jordan. It's not that he showed up, put the work in, and then was somebody wildly different when he was done, when he clocked out after work, quote unquote, clocked out. He was always Michael Jordan, is always Michael Jordan. Forever always will be Michael Jordan, on and off the court, in and out of the job. So if you are hoping to achieve more, if you're hoping to be a top performer in whatever your field is, understand that that can't just be a mask that you wear from time to time. Understand that in order to be a high performer, it is something you have to dive whole body into, and you have to live in that realm, whatever it is. You have to walk the walk, talk the talk, and be the person. You have to be the whole person, inside and out. Again, that is something that separates these high performers from everybody else. Another thing about consistency. Okay, doing this podcast, I've had the great opportunity to sit down and meet with tons of really very interesting people. And as such, this is not my first and only job. I have another job. Most of you guys know I'm a martial arts instructor. And I'm a parent. I'm a father. I have 2 lovely children, and with another one on the way. So that means I have a limited time to do this podcast. And that means that scheduling sometimes for this podcast is a little bit tough. I have had people that I've scheduled, and when the day comes for us to finally sit down and meet, they don't show up. And in my messages and contacts that I try to reach out to this person leading up to the day, I get nothing back. And I chalked it up to 2 things. Number one, okay, maybe this person doesn't do a wonderful job of managing their calendar. Maybe this person doesn't care about being on my show because I'm a nobody, and that's okay. I'm not Joe Rogan. That's fine. Joe Rogan, again, another high performer in the field. Okay, but maybe those people don't attribute that much value from what they could gain from this podcast, and that's okay. I accept that. I pretty well know where I stand in this kind of world. And if you're listening, by the way, thanks for listening. Appreciate all of you. But that's one school of thought. Like, okay, they don't show up because they forgot about it, or they don't put much effort into it. They don't know how to use their calendar very efficiently. Another thing is, sometimes I have to schedule meetings out 6, 7, 8 months even. My calendar for this podcast gets filled up pretty quickly. And another school of thought here, I schedule this interview. 8 months go by. I'm messaging this person. I give them the details for the episode. Here's stuff for the show. Hey, thanks for signing up. Here's the calendar link. Okay, here's the topics we're going to discuss. Here's the questions we're going to go. Hey, it's the week of. Remember, here's the times. Here's the links. All these things I touch all these times, and they still don't show up. So another idea, another thought process here is, maybe they were there. They're ready to do all this work to put into whatever it is that they're doing, and then 8 months go by, and they're no longer doing that anymore. And what I've learned from that is, people come and go. People have interests that are high in one area and low in another. And what that shows is a lack of consistency. right? You put some work into a project and you expect immediately for it to turn back and say, "Oh, right, yeah, here's all this." That's not how things work. You have to put the work in, right? Joe Rogan. Let's talk about Joe Rogan just for a little bit here. Podcasting. I'm in the world of podcasting. I have this podcast. I have another podcast. There's another podcast that I've done in the past and is now done. There's a ton of podcasts. And again, for you, dear listeners, thank you. Thank you for choosing this podcast for you to listen to out of the huge amount of other podcasts that you could and perhaps even should be listening to. Thank you for listening to this podcast. Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan didn't start out as who he is now. Right? Joe Rogan had another job. He was a comedian. He's a UFC commentator, done a number of other things. He didn't start out and showed up to the studio and say, "Okay, I'm Joe Rogan. Everybody wants to be on my show, and these are the type of..." No. Spotify didn't offer him a deal on day one. No. He had to put the work in consistently over and over and over again. Again, high performers, they put the work in consistently over and over again. And another thing that I think high performers have the unique ability to do is they experience failure at a different understanding, a different level than what we normal people experience failure at. Because they understand that failure is a part of the process. You have to fail. Sometimes you have to fail over and over and over and over and so on until you can succeed that one or two or three times. Joe Rogan, again, started a podcast like everybody else who started a podcast. And he was relatively known. He had a name, so people probably listened to his podcast more in the beginning than somebody listened to my podcast in the beginning. But that's not the separation. The separation is those numbers probably were failures to him. Man, only 1,000 people this one. Oh man, only 5,000 for this one. Oh man, this one only got 700. What are we doing? No. He kept going. He kept going. He knows that those things will compile over time. That work, that energy, that time that was invested. I mean, there's a key word there: invested in whatever the project is. That it will separate him from the rest of the crowd. Michael Jordan, when he showed up to practice, showed up early, stayed long. He was there day in and day out. How many times do you think Michael Jordan stood at that free throw line and sunk those baskets? How many times do you think Michael Jordan early in his career went to that free throw line and missed those baskets? Michael Jordan famously didn't make his high school basketball team. They didn't let Michael Jordan play the game. He wasn't good enough. But instead of turning back on his heels, instead of walking away from the game, he kept on. He pressed on despite that failure. So my question for you, listeners, is this: what failures have you experienced? What challenges have you faced that you have turned and walked away from? And where are you on your road? Is it time perhaps to go back to those things? To pick one of those things, something that you are truly passionate about, that maybe you experienced failure early on in. Maybe it's time to go back to that. Maybe it's time to make a choice to commit to that. In the martial arts, there's a story that we tell the students, and this is a wonderful story, and I wish I could attribute this to somebody, but I actually don't know who this came from. But I'll do my best to iterate this for you. There's a small island village full of happy, friendly individuals. There's a king of the island. The king is welcoming and appreciative of all of his people that live there with him. And the island really is full of farmers. They farm their community. But there's another island just a little ways away. That island is known for the warriors, the fierce warriors that they have there. Sure, they farm. Sure, there's a king. The king there is a little bit less friendly. The people of that village are a little bit less friendly because they're in a war type atmosphere all the time. That war village decides to invade the island of the farmers. The king gets word from the people, the sailors that are coming in. King, the village of warriors are coming. They're going to come in. They're going to take our land. They're going to burn us to the ground. What do we do? Great king, what do we do? And the king says, let's get all the boats. Let's put it on the other side of the harbor. So the villagers quickly rush around. They put the ships on the other side of the harbor. All right, king, should we start loading the boats? He said, no, no, no. Put them on fire. Set them ablaze. What? Burn the ships? How do we escape? How do we go back? What do we do now? No, burn the ships. Great king, what are you saying? Burn the ships. So the villagers are obedient. They trust the king. They burn the ships. They're thinking, what do we do now? What is going on? See, what the king did there was he took the villagers, he took their plan B out of the equation. They no longer had a backup plan. You see, when you are on your path, whether you're striving to be a high performer or just get through your day, if you have a backup plan, if you wake up in that morning and say, you know what, I'm not feeling super good today, I'm just going to go through the day and see how I go. And, you know, at some point, maybe I just, this is too much. I'm going to leave early. There's your backup plan. That's your way out. But if you didn't have that backup plan, like those villagers who didn't have that backup plan, how do you think they fought? They had to fight all in. They had to. There's nothing left. They had to stand their ground and fight for what was theirs. They had to defend their livelihood, their village. It was their village to defend. They had no backup plan. The king told everybody to burn the ships. There's no way out. They had to stand their ground and fight. But that warrior village, do you know what they had? They had ships. And they were expecting an easy win. They were expecting to go through and just take those people out, no problem. Easy. They weren't expecting those villagers to burn their ships. They were expecting them to flee, to run away. The king helped them on that. The king allowed them the opportunity to stand their ground, to fight for what was theirs. So again, as you're listening to this, having a backup plan can be helpful. It can be helpful. But also, that backup plan can be a crutch. That backup plan can give you an opportunity to walk away from your passion, to walk away from what you could be a high performer in, and just go the easy road. Do the backup plan. Michael Jordan, again, didn't make his high school basketball team. He was committed. He had burned his ships long ago. He stayed. He fought. He tried again. People like to comment about Thomas Edison probably at this point. I'm not a huge fan of Thomas Edison, but he did have a team of inventors working for him round the clock on perfecting the carbon filament for the light bulb. And they did try however many times, and they failed until one of them succeeded. And they didn't stop. They stayed. They kept going. They kept trying to reinvent that system that was there, to make it their own, to make it better, to improve it. So again, listeners, what is it that you have failed at? What is it that you took the easy road out of that now is time to go back to? These high performers, they know this. They understand this concept. They understand that they have to go all in on whatever it is that they want to achieve. If you want to be great at this thing, you have to put your time, your energy, your blood, your sweat, your tears in. It's not going to happen by accident. It's not going to happen just because you want it more than the other person. It's going to happen because you put the work in. It's going to happen because you have passion for what you do, because that passion will sustain. That passion will keep you coming back to doing whatever it is that you are trying for. See, another thing that the high performers have is, again, that ability to use their time wisely. And I think that they know how to use their time wisely because they experience failure so many times over. They know what works and what doesn't work. And they do this both by trying and seeing what happens and fails, but they also do this by kind of tracking the metrics. Okay, I'm going to try this. Does this work? Yes or no? Yes. Okay, good. Note that down. This thing works. That thing didn't work so good. Let's do this now. And they cut all of the fat away and they only have the meat because they're consistently iterative testing. They're trying and see, this works, this doesn't work. This works, this doesn't work. This works, this doesn't work. And they have a database of the things that work. and they do those things. They do those things over and over and over again. So they link in that consistency with the testing of trying to see what works, and they accept failure. Nope, okay, that didn't work. We failed. Okay, fine, no problem. Let's go to the next thing. Nope, that didn't work. Okay, that failed. Okay, let's go to the next thing. All within their realm, all with trying to reach that goal that they have, to be the best at whatever it is, to allow their passion to flow through into that thing that they're doing. That ability to test to see what works. This works, great, do it. This doesn't work, okay, fine, don't do that. Right? How many times do you have to run into a wall before you realize, oh, actually, that's not a door. I have to go over here before I go into that door. Right? Hopefully, you only do that one time. Although in life, it is common to run into that wall over and over and over again. I have been there. I've done it. Ran into that wall. Oh, man, I know this doesn't work. Why did I do this again? I know this didn't work. Why did I? Sometimes it's tough to see other options. You run into the wall. Why? I don't see a door here. I'm just going to try to run into this wall over here. I run into this wall over here. And sometimes that's what it takes. Sometimes that's what it takes in order for you to turn into the Kool-Aid man, to break through and create a new door. Because we don't know what works. Sometimes we're paving the path as we go. Well, I'm going to try this and see what happens. Oh, okay, well, I guess that didn't work. All right, I'm going to try this and see what happens. Until you can turn into the Kool-Aid man and break free, and now there's another wall in front of you, right? And you have to go through and do the same process over again. But you can look back. You can look back at the holes in the walls. You can look back at those doors that you walked through. And when something similar comes up, you can rely on that past experience to do what works again. That's what the high performers do. They're tracking these things. They put the time in. They're consistent, showing up day in and day out. They put the work in. They accept whatever failures may come because they understand that that is part of the process. I have to fail in order to find out what works. Something has to work. Something has to not work. And sometimes this thing that worked, it only worked 2% better than this other thing. That's okay. 2% is better than 0% or negative 2%. It's a positive. So something that we can do, something that we can, us normal people, us non-high performers, something that we can do is we can track this. I like to do journaling. I do this every day. I actually do it in the beginning of the day and the end of the day. I track different things. But that gives me an opportunity to kind of think back through my day. What worked? What didn't work? What wall did I run into? And tomorrow, do I have that wall again? And where can I move down a little bit to see where I can try to break through, or hopefully find blindly, oh, there's the door. Great, I can walk through. But if I'm not thinking about these things, if I'm not tracking these things, then I'm just going to run into that wall again in the same spot over and over again. Again, these high performers, they have the same number of hours in the day that you have. They started life the same as how you started. We're all born. We're all little babies. We all grow. Sometimes these high performers had better things that were provided to them early on that we didn't always have. Yes, agreed. How do you overcome that? Well, you have to do the work to overcome that. You have to have the passion to continue whatever it is in the field that you're in. Can't stop. Be that king that burns the ships. That way you have to stand. You have to fight for what you have. Fight for what is yours. Fight for what you want. Don't back down. Don't surrender. Listeners, again, I want to say thank you. Thank you for choosing this podcast to listen to. I don't think I thank you listeners enough. Thank you. Truly. It means so much for me to have an opportunity to share these things with you, to share these conversations with you, to know that there's people on the other side of this listening and getting help, getting some sort of benefit from their life. So listeners, this one was for you. Thank you.